Beginning of March and February is now behind us. February was a pretty dry and warm month really, and that does mean that we can probably expect some droughts later on this year. But now we're in March, we can expect the sun to be out for longer and for the temperatures to go up. Despite it being a little bit overcast today, it's actually pretty nice out and it's really good weather to start sowing some seeds. In my last video I showed you some seeds that would be really good to get in towards the end of February. One of those seeds, the peppers, probably starting to get past the time to do it, but I'll leave the card up at the moment, so if you want to have a look at those you can do. But it's still time to be sowing some tomatoes if you want to get a really good crop in this year. And the video before that I showed you a number of different flowers that you can sow, and you can still get on with those at the moment. So definitely lots and lots of things you can be sowing at this time of the year. One of the biggest challenges this time of the year for sowing seeds is getting the right temperature so the seeds will germinate. So you can still use your windowsill, a greenhouse like this, a heated propagation bench, or you can start to try and warm the soil up outside. I'll put some cloches down in my kitchen garden to try and warm up the soil so I can sow directly into it later on this month. The added benefit is that it will start to encourage the weeds to germinate so I can get those out of the ground before I start putting my seeds in. Because space here in my greenhouse is a premium at the moment, I'm going to be prioritising seeds that require quite a lot of time between germination and harvest so I can get as many of those going now, give it as much of a season as possible before I start to harvest them. So the first seed that I'm going to be showing you today is Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts are one of those vegetables that you either love or you hate. I personally really like them, and I particularly like the ones I grow at home. They taste so much better than the ones you get in the supermarkets. They tend to be a lot sweeter and have a much better crisp to them. The ones I'll be sowing are from real seeds. So these are heirloom varieties, and that means I can take the seeds from these and I can grow them next year and be guaranteed that they will be the same plant, so they're not a hybrid variety. I'll be sowing quite a lot of these. These will be going down my allotment because the way I'm going to be managing things this year is the salads and things that take a very quick turnaround in my home garden and the kitchen garden here, and anything that takes a long time to grow, and mainly the roots, will be going down to the allotment. So these ones will be started off here and I'll transfer them down the allotment later on this year. I'm going to be sowing a variety of Brussels sprouts I've never sown before called Seven Hills. It's an old variety which is much shorter than the others you tend to see around at the moment. It's pretty good for exposed windy sites, not that I have a particularly exposed allotment, but this means I can hopefully grow quite a few of them. I'll be growing them and sowing them in these modular trays. There'll be one to potentially up to two in each of these modules, and that way I can thin them out and get the strongest plant out into my allotment. I'm going to be sowing the Brussels sprouts into peat-free general purpose compost, so you don't need to do anything too special for this. If you wanted to, you can sieve it, make sure that it's a nice fine compost you'll be sowing into, but other than that, nothing special needed. My compost has dried out a bit, so I'm going to make sure that it's really wet before I sow anything into it. Give it a chance to absorb the water, because dried out compost can become a bit hydrophobic, so I'm going to give it a good soaking and then sow into that. Whilst that compost is absorbing that water, I'll just quickly show you around the greenhouse so you can see how things are going here. The nasturtium's doing really well. I've potted a few of them on already, so I'm really pleased with how that's looking. We're getting true leaves through on the lupins. I've got a couple that aren't looking too great, and I'll probably do a second sowing of these as well, because I absolutely love lupins in the flower bed. Asters are coming on pretty strong, so starting to see the true leaves coming through on those. They'll need to be potted on shortly. And just in the last week we've seen some of the tomatoes and peppers start to come up, so again really pleased with how well these are germinating. Spring onions next, so they're coming through really well, multi-sown, so I should be able to pop them out in the garden just like this and they'll grow in a bunch together. And my herbs are doing pretty good. As you can see there, got some basil, got some coriander and parsley. So yeah, really pleased with how things are going at the moment. Real seeds are shipping in these paper envelopes at the moment. That means you need to make sure you're sowing them in the season you get them, otherwise you'll start to see those germination rates dropping down. I'm going to have way more than I need, but I'm going to try and sow them all, and that way I can pick the strongest plants out when I put them down the allotment. So now that the seeds are in, just going to give them a covering up with just enough compost to cover them over and no deeper than the actual depth of the seed itself. Finally, just give it a really good water and then add a label. The next seed I'll be sowing is a cabbage. Now this is an autumn cabbage, so I'm going to try and get it in now, give it a good season to get to full maturity, ready for harvesting in autumn. So when you do pick up your cabbage seeds, make sure you're getting the varieties correct, so you can get some summer ones, autumn and winter varieties. So you want to make sure that you are sowing them at the right time. So again, these are a heritage and heirloom variety, so I could allow these to go to seed and collect those seeds and sow them again for next year's crop. I'll be sowing all of these, and like the Brussels sprouts, they'll be going down to the allotment. I'll need to protect them, but they take a while to get to maturity, and that's why they're heading down there. The type of cabbage I'm going to be growing is an heirloom variety, so I can save the seeds from this and grow on again next year. This is an early autumn variety, so I'm going to get it into some trays now, and that means hopefully I'll have a good amount of time for them to mature and have a great crop early towards the end of the year. This is an early autumn variety, so I want to get as much time between now and when I harvest them, probably around about October time, for them to really mature. And as before, these are from real seeds, so they're in a paper envelope and really do need to be used up in the season that you buy them. So I'm going to get those into the soil now. Like the other seeds I've sown today, I'm going to be using multi-purpose peat-free compost, and I'll be putting one of these per station into the seed tray. With the seeds in, we're just going to give them a really fine covering of compost. They're pretty small seeds. Give them a press down. Make it firm but not too firm. Once that's done, time for watering. If you didn't see in previous videos, I've been using this label maker, which has been absolutely brilliant, along with these aluminium labels. So together I've got a really good way now of making sure that I know what I'm sowing, because I tend to forget once I've put the seeds in. The final seed I'll be sowing today is beetroot, and this is a red beetroot. You can get yellow beetroot, which is a lot sweeter and is really nice roasted, whereas this one you tend to either pickle or you steam yourself and eat it like it is. So this isn't one that I particularly like, but I know other people do, so I'll be sowing those for my friends, and it came from a magazine, so just thought I'd give it a go and see what happens. The core of the seeds that I'll be sowing this year, they're going into some peat-free multi-purpose compost. You can sieve it if you like, if you want to have a finer material for them to germinate into, but I'm finding that actually it's not doing too bad in the way that it is already, so I'm not having to sieve it, and if I do, I don't do it too finely. You can see these seeds are a little bit bigger, so just need to make sure that we've got enough depth on the compost that we'll be covering them over. So as always, just cover them up with the same amount of depth as the seed themselves. Once that's done, back to watering and labelling. March has proven to be really busy, and my greenhouse is already starting to fill up. It's been really good to see how many plants I can germinate here in my greenhouse, but it is starting to fill, and I'm going to have to start using things like my cold frame to protect them as they grow on. Some of the plants are almost ready for potting on. They've got their true leaves coming through, so I'll be transplanting them later, and I'll be reusing those seed trays for the next batch of seeds coming through. I really hope you're having a great start to this year's season, and if you like this sort of content, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you are starting to sow this time of the year as well, because there is so many options available. If you are already subscribed, please hit the like button. It lets the algorithm know that this exists, and I do really appreciate every bit of engagement I get. So thank you ever so much, and I'll see you next time.